Gus Bradley, the defensive coordinator of the Colts, it kind of much maligned, right? Because 28th in points allowed the last 2 years, his 2 years as the defensive coordinator. But I love listening to Gus Bradley talk about defense, defensive football, talking about a guy like Jaylon Carlies, who's coming in, drafted as a safety, but he's a big guy. Why was he drafted, and what did Richard Smith have to do with it? And his development, not as a safety, but potentially as a linebacker, what makes them think that he can be a plus-level linebacker in the National Football League? Really interesting to listen to Gus Bradley lay that out.
Okay, it's been a while since we've been together, so it's been a good off season, and we've had a chance as a coaching staff to go through a lot of things, and then obviously free agency, the draft, and to the point we are now. But it's exciting to get our players back in. I mean, you get another chance to see them, what they did in the off season coming back, the shape they're in. So pretty pleased with how it's going so far.
Gus, how much are you allowed, or do you beat the drum for that 15th pick to be a pass rusher?
How much do I beat the drum, and how much am I heard? No, I think we always do. We just look at it as a defensive mindset and just say, all right, here's the guys we really like. And I think, similar to the offense, they look, hey, if we draft this guy, how do you see him being utilized? What's the plan for him? How do you think he can fit in? Those conversations are always had. So, yeah, there's guys throughout the draft. I mean, really throughout the whole draft that we, feel like, hey, here's the sixth round. Here's the guy that we really like. Here's the traits we think he can bring. And, I think that's with every round. But, yeah, Chris and the whole scouting staff does a good job of making sure that our fealings are heard.
What intrigued you about him?
What's that?
What intrigued you about this guy?
You know what? All right, there's a couple things I think about rushers. When you look at the history of rushers, at times sometimes it's tough. There's a transition, right? That you come up and you go, oh, this guy was great in college, and and then he has 4 sacks or 5 sacks, and there's a transition time. So I think you look at players and you say, all right, what can speed that process up? What gives them a chance to be, it's always a race to maturity, especially with Russia. How fast can they get there to where, it finally kicked in their 4th year, their 5th year, you start to see them get a good feel for things. And I think with Laiatu, he is very polished. He's got an arsenal of moves. He's not a one-trick pony. You can see speed to power, you see speed. And so you feel like, boy, his maturity, it has a quicker chance of getting there than, this guy's going to develop. And it's like, no, he's intriguing. He's pretty polished that way. And he, like I said, the arsenal moves and the play level, he plays with high effort. So sometimes those things that take some time to translate, it feels like he's got a head start on it. And I think that's what was intriguing about him.
How many guys have that coming in? Is that rare?
You try to, based off film, and you're meeting with them to see their maturity level and where they're at. But it's hard. But I think our scouting staff, Chris, Ed, the whole group, felt pretty strongly about that. In the short time we were with them, and then watching on tape, you can see some of those things. Dan Lynn was our quality control coach at the Chargers, and he was the defensive coordinator at UCLA. So there's, hey, how do you think he would fit in? You coached him, how we play. There's conversations. You try to get as much information as you can.
But just in terms of like the arsenal of moves, and this is, because you can see it when you watch him, right? You're in the middle of me. Is that typical? Is that hard to find something?
I don't know if usually guys got 1 or 2, that they feel. And really in the NFL, there's not many guys that, I got 8 of them. I don't know if that's realistic. I think, guys that have their main one, their counter moves and things like that. He just feels like he does have that, and he's pretty polished at the college level having that. Now, we anticipate that it should translate over, but there's still a time period that, the tackles are a little bit better and protection schemes and things like that.
With Latu, it seems like he didn't win at the college level because he was bigger, stronger, faster than everyone. Like, he's big, strong, and fast, but he won because of his technique and his preparation. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that it's obviously the skill set. One of the things that jumped off it was his athleticism. I mean, they had him drop. You can see him flip his hips. Not that we're going to do that a lot with him, but you could see his overall athleticism. He can rush in a 2-point. He can rush in a 3-point. He's used as a spinner. Now you can put him over a guard. So I think when we look at the big picture, the versatility that he gives us too, that overall athleticism with his mindset, he's pretty mature that way. I think, some of the adversity he went through probably helped that maturity.
To get better at football when he wasn't actively playing the sport, because he missed 2 years, comes back and has 10.5 sacks. I believe his first year back with UCLA. What does that say about him and just his desire to get better?
Well, and it's a little bit of a fresher player too, right? Like he didn't play for 2 years, so there's that part of it too that says, hey, what is his upside? And that would be intriguing to see. In our conversations with him and how he handles it and how he handled his adversity and how he fought through it, because there's going to be tough days, there's going to be challenging times. But it's such a mindset. You go against a tackle, your first rush, and you get stymied, and you're like, oh, this is a little bit different. But I think he has more of the mentality of he just keeps coming, and he had a chance to work with Max Crosby and, our guys, Kwity and Dio, and, so I think, there's a pretty good understanding, a little bit of his mindset.
How do you see your cornerback position right now?
It's a great question. I think it's really wide open now. You got Dabo coming back and Juju and JJ, and so we really like that part of it. I think for us, it's the skill set, the length, the speed. Now it's just the consistency. Who's going to step up and be that guy that takes the next step there as a corner. Kenny, we feel real good about what he brings, and we trust Kenny and his consistency. But with those other guys, it's play in and play out. Who can play at the standard we're looking to play at?
Gus, with Juju, what did he? It's a kind of obvious. What did he miss by not practicing last year? When he got back in the field, you guys were in game mode.
Yeah, that part is challenging now because there's still a little bit where we're looking at him, and you can see that he's had some experience playing. And then now when you're going through this phase of it, you're looking back at it and you're saying, boy, let's start over with him here. And let's get him back to the fundamentals and the basis. And what, it's not so much the technique at the line of scrimmage, it's more of the formations, the motions, the jets, the things like that I think that for Juju, that's going to be the learning curve where he missed a lot of that, even in walkthroughs at training camp.
Gus, is Carlies a guy, Jaylon Carlies a guy that you feel like can make that position switch?
We do, and I'll tell you why. I know Gus Bradley talked about Richard does a great job evaluating linebackers and that. What I just trust Richard, and we watched them together, was, in our style of defense, you look for sometimes you look at safeties too, and you say, let's take a look at this guy as a safety. I know being around a guy like Richard Smith, if he can pass drop and understand pass coverage, he'll get him to use his hands. He'll get him to play the run. He'll get him to be physical. He'll get that part of it. The tougher part is the change of direction, understanding pass concepts and that. So with knowing that for years now, we've looked at safeties. And I think that, probably to give you a little bit of comparison was when we were at the Raiders with the Divine Diablo. We saw him as a safety at Virginia Tech and said, hey, we think this guy can make the transition, and it ended up working out well. And I think, that's, I'm not comparing those two, but similar now. Similar. We looked at him and said, whoa, look at him now. There's a lot of good traits. His pass coverage, his ability to play the pass, understand concepts, all that part is there. Now it's the other part, but he's really intriguing for us because of that.
So how many pass rush sub packages do you tend to use? And with adding a guy like this and with the number of bodies you have, how does that factor in?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think when we first got together, we said, boy, if we can build this to where you got 8 guys, right? Like, let's get 8 where we can roll and we can sub in, keep guys fresh and do that. That's ideal. Now, when you see guys that have specific traits and you see different skill sets, you go, hold on now. I think, we got a chance for a mismatch. Let's see what that can develop to be. An example might be Melvin Ingram at the Chargers. All of a sudden now he was a spinner. Hey, you put him over a guard as a spinner, and we might have liked that matchup at that time. When you have an athlete like that, I think those packages, might expand based on what we see day in and day out to utilize the skill set.
Is free safety, you see free safety kind of the same way you see corner in terms of being wide open?
Yeah, I think, Rodney and Nick and, Daniel, all those guys at safety is just, which one is going to come to the top. I think that, a guy like Rodney, his first year, good year, second year, struggled at times, but it feels like now, just a short time being back with him now, it's like, I've learned from that. That's not happening again. He's kind of got that mindset. So it feels like a pretty competitive group back there. And I think Nick, we tried him at strong and can play strong, but I think even looking back at him at college, when he sees things top down, his comfort level and his speed picks up. So, he's in a pretty good mindset now, so it'll just play out there and we'll see what we come up with.
What have you seen What have you seen from just Dallas Flowers, confidence-wise, even after the injury? Because King was telling us he's a guy who wants that spot to start.
Yeah, I thought he was really impressive up until the injury. That he did some good things. He's got that maturity, very driven, knows what he wants. Pretty focused on that. You see him even in these walkthroughs and stuff. So all those guys are extremely competitive. They get along great, but you can tell they all have a sense of, hey, there's some opportunities right here. We got to be on it. And the big thing for us is, man, you got to make plays, but the consistency. We have a veteran group up front. We got a veteran group at the linebacker spot, and a big thing with them is we got to be able to trust. They love everybody, but you got to be able to trust the guy next to you, and that's what they need to make sure they possess. That trust when they're on the field.
How important is that communication? The growth in year two with Jaylin and Juju, where they now have more bond with their other teammates in the secondary. Help out with that.
Well, that's a big part of it, because sometimes you're going through that phase of, I got to gain the respect of my teammates. They got to, hey, they got to understand that I know what I'm doing. They got to know that I know the package. There's all that part of it that sometimes can be cause a little clutter for some younger players. The good ones don't worry about that. They feel like, hey, if I just go play, all that will come. But everybody's a little bit different. That phase is out for them now. Really where their full attention is on making plays and doing the right things which I asked of them. So, go ahead.
As you went back and looked at the film from last season, 28 points allowed, what stood out?
Yeah, like I said, that sometimes the inconsistency. There was, there was games. There was 3 or 4 games where we look back and say, it just wasn't us. And what was the culprit of it? And explosive passes and things like that. Whether it was bus coverage here and there, but I think that's what we're talking about. I think in those times we just got to make sure the young guys got to play at their highest level, and it's pretty cool to see now. I think anytime that you have consistency, with players, coaches, anytime that it does give you a chance. Obviously, decisions have to be made. We all understand that part. But I think as players, they know it. Boy, if they can be in the system a couple of years into it, it gives them a chance to play faster. And now with the older guys understanding the system, now you're starting to see the accountability. Hey, this is how it needs to look. Rather than just kind of the coaches showing them what it looks like, the players kind of have an understanding of what it looks like.
Because the last question. Obviously, the decision had to get on this contract. It's not your decision. But what does he make to this defense?
Who's that?
Kwity Paye.
You talk about trust, right? Like, there's a man that you trust. On the edge, does things right, comes to work every day. You know what you're going to get. Highly respected by all of his teammates. And I believe, and I think all of our coaches, and even this organization, there's another level for him. And in this short period of time, you can see that in his mind too. Like, he's excited about it. With Charlie in there and learning some different things right there for him, you can just feel like Kwity, like we said with rushers, sometimes it can take some time. And but yeah, we think he's in a good space right now, in just at my business with him.
That's Gus Bradley. And Gus, you know what? No matter what happens, always a sense of humor and always interesting to listen to talk about defensive football. We appreciate Gus Bradley's ability to do that. We'll see what kind of defense he puts on the field, whether Latu can kind of lift this group, put more pressure on the quarterback and put a quarterback under stress so he makes bad plays. Bad plays for a quarterback, those usually equate to good plays for a defense. We'll see if Gus Bradley this year has the tools he needs to get this defense to elevate, because it's the defense and the offense. It's not just the offense. The offense got a chance to be really, really good. Defense has got to rise up too, got to lift to top 20 in points against, top 20 in yards against, because if it doesn't, that's going to be trouble for this team.